Today we mark the 250th anniversary of Gloucester County passing the Gloucester County Resolves on July 14th, 1774. So the question then comes to everybody. What side of the aisle will you be sitting upon? Remember, all purposes, about a third of the colonists are going to stay loyal. They are the people who are conservative. They like safety. They like the police patrolling the streets. They like all things in the way it should be. The other 1/3 of the population are the rebels. And they're willing to jump off the bridge and then go their own way. The bigger part of the group sits in the middle. About a third is always going to be neutral. Not willing to join, follow the loyalists, not willing to hop in the parade and follow the rebels either. After all, what happens if the loyalists win? And you've signed onto the rebel cause. They do have ropes for traitors. Then again, if you stay loyal to the king and the rebels win the day, what happens to the loyalists? Yes, it's safer to stay in the middle and not play the politics with one side or the other. And there's a great cartoon from the Mud and Guts series that has the colonist inside his house. He was just taking down the rebel flag, is attaching the British flag to the lanyard, about to pull it up with the British soldier standing behind him. So it's hard to say which side is safe to be on for all parts of the population. So that becomes the question in 1774. And so here we are, somewhere with the Committee of Safety, and that begins the discussion and the debate. I think a couple people coming. But a good song that depicts the proper loyalist frame of mind. Here's a health to the king and a lasting peace, to factional end and wealth increase. Come, let us drink while we have breath, for there's no drinking after death. And he who would this health deny, down among the dead men, down among the dead men, down, 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 down among the dead men, let them lie. So, yes, do we stay with a safe, stable, conservative world, or do we jump off the other side? Which side has consumed more alcohol? But it's just about time to begin. So, without further ado, there are more people coming. They're rushing down the streets. So, a good sea shanty then, you probably know. How about, whoop jamboree, ring-tailed sailors, come on behind, whoop jamboree, Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. That's your line. Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. He's got it. Come on, me lads, be of good cheer, for the Isle of Lundy draws near. Grab your bunks and stow your gear, Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. Whoop jamboree, ring-tailed sailors, come along behind. Whoop jamboree, Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. Pilot cutter is up ahead, do the weather me lads, the heaving of the lead. Tonight we'll sleep in a feather bed, Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. Whoop jamboree, ring-tailed sailors, come along behind. Whoop jamboree, Jenny, keep your tailpiece warm. keep your tailpiece. Oh. We were saying earlier, why does the rebellion spring up here in the colonies? Well, you take all the religious dissenters, ship them over there. Then you take all the Scottish dissenters and the Scottish loyalists who fled Scotland after 1745, throw them over here. And you bring in all the convicts. Convict labor was huge in 1720s to 1740s.
It is now.
All right. But they brought in all the Scots and all the Irish, and this cleaned out the jails of London, sent them over here as well. Mix them all together. Try to take money out of their back pocket. You wonder why they're rebelling and gnashing their teeth. So a lot of those songs you're going to hear from this time period are your Scottish stuff. Things like Bonnie Charlie's gone a walk, safely o'er the friendly main. Many's the heart we break in twa. Should he no come back again? Should he no come back again? Will you no come back again? Better love ye cannot be. Will you no come back again? Whenever I hear the loud rock sing, unto evening sinking down, to me it sounds the same refrain. Will you no come back again? Will you no come back again? Will you no come back again? Better love ye cannot be. Will you no come back again? Many's the gallant soldier fought, many's the gallant chieftain fell. Death itself was dearly bought, all for Scotland's king and law. Will ye no come back again? Will ye no come back again? Better love ye cannot be. Will ye no come back again? And there was a contingent in Virginia that actually offered Bonnie Prince Charlie to be the king of Virginia before the American Revolution. He, being old by that point in time, declined the offer to come from France to Virginia. But it does show you there is a fairly large loyalist contingent here as well.
And they said we will call it the Old Dominion.
Well, that's because that we refused to bow our heads to Cromwell. All right, back then, for the English Civil War, 1746. Mr. Berkeley. Are we ready? There it is. Then now 1774.
These are your rebel rousers, sir.
Oh, wait, I recognize them. Oh, you as well, sir. Come.
Well, good afternoon. Go on.
Good afternoon.
We need more rebel rousers. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Leanne Rose, and I'm the owner of Shades of Our Past. And we have partnered today with Gloucester, as well as the Waterman's Museum, as well as the Virginia 250, and my company is Shades of Our Past, to bring you a program today. This is your anniversary, your 250th anniversary of the 1774 Gloucester results. And you're all going to participate today because we have many results we have to read out. And what better way to know the results that Gloucester put together is to hear the words of your neighbors and friends here in Gloucester. So I'm going to be over there at the podium, and I'm going to have little cue cards. If your cue card is number 10, it will be a number on the top. When I lift your card up, that's when you get up and speak. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I'm resolved number 16. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
cue card.
Door number 3. I'll point to you.
I don't remember what I said.
Somebody took somebody's cue card. There we go. No, that's all right. Madam, if you want to talk. Sure. There you go. That's less for me to do. Okay. 2 little breaks in there. You're going to be interrupted by a patriot and interrupted by a loyalist. All right. Anybody want to be the loyalist today? All right. There you go. All right. So this program is we're going to take you through the Gloucester Resolves and the Liberty Poll. And then at the very end, you'll have a chance to ask modern day questions and get your questions answered about the program today. So gentlemen and ladies, let's be transported back, even though we have air conditioning in here, let's be transported back to 1774 and the day that Gloucester wrote their resolves. Gentlemen and ladies.
On December 16th, 1773, the Sons of Liberty in Boston dumped 342 chests of tea into the water, setting of a chain of events that would affect all 13 colonies, even Virginia. The colonies became increasingly tired on the taxes that had been placed upon them without their consent. Parliament's stamp tax, and Townsend duties, a tax on glass, paper, paint, lead, and tea, and now it's tea tax, were all met with protests. But this defining act of defiance would cause major repercussions from England.
Though some believe the dumping of the tea into the harbor was a great blow for liberty.
The question is whether the destruction of the teas was necessary. I apprehend it was absolutely and indispensably so.
Yet others believe that what these men in Boston did was wrong.
How can they cry liberty and freedom yet deny others their property?
But whatever side you were on, the reaction of Britain to this dumping of tea had you concerned. The coercive or intolerable acts affected all, with the closing of the port of Boston. If it can be done in Boston, what would this mean for the other colonies?
Virginia, hearing the cries of their brothers and sisters in Boston, felt the call. Their House of Burgesses asked for a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer on the day Boston Harbor was to be closed. The royal governor's response was to dissolve them, in answer to which they met at the Raleigh Tavern and asked for a Congress of the colonies to be put into place. But was that enough? As they returned to their counties, committees were formed and resolves were written to stop importing British goods or exporting. Some even went further, and others had a wait-and-see attitude. Each resolve had a representative, and 7 of these went to the Continental Congress. In late 1774, Archibald Carey put up a liberty pole in front of the King's Arms Tavern as a reminder of what would happen if the new resolves that the so-called Congress had put in place were not followed. Actions were taken that reminded Virginians of the speech made when the first tax was placed upon us, that of the Stamp Act, when a man from Hanover named Patrick Henry rose up and spoke.
Caesar has goods. Charles I is Cromwell, and George III.
Treason was cried by the Speaker, Mr. Robinson, as well as others in the House.
May profit by their example. If this be treason, make the most of it.
Now let the king know what this is.
Down with the king! Down with the king!
See young Oh, my heavens, look at that, would you? That would cure the refractory, wouldn't it?
The crowd goes, grrr.
Oh, they do indeed. They do indeed. My heavens. I think almost 10 years, tar and feathers has been a means of political expression. We'll call it that. Well, it's quite good, though. Quite good. I understand entirely the necessity of it, though it's unfortunate. But what does one do in such turbulent times? Adapt and work for the greater good, even when it calls for some sacrifices. Yes? Too bad not everyone is willing to sacrifice for the good of their country. But there are those neighbors who will be loving enough neighbors to remind them of their error. Yes, good business that. Good business that. The Liberty poles, tar and the feathers. Just another example of the things we have brought over from Britain, is it not? The necessity of it is quite plain. How long has it been since tar and feathers has been applied in, well, rather frequent occurrences? Yes? 10 years now? Not quite. I'd say in Massachusetts Bay, the business has really begun its increase, for what, since 1766. Here we are in 1774, and what are we doing? Looking at maybe another 10 years of it, 20 years perhaps, you could say. Now, it is not to say that it is a pleasant bit of business, tar and the feathers. Tar and feathering has been done often to humiliate people, give them usually, generally, some mild discomfort. Although there is William Smith of Boston, the most egregious notion of tarring and feathers that I have ever come across through my correspondence with some of our neighbors in Massachusetts Bay. Smith was accused of striking a member of the Sons of Liberty. Now, the Sons of Liberty, of course, is a very secretive organization, a secret society, if you will. So it's difficult to know who precisely he struck. But some of their brothers who were in the know arrived at Smith's house that night. They removed him, excuse me, ladies, but stripped him bare naked of his clothing, brought him out to the Liberty Tree in Boston. There he was given an impromptu trial. He was covered in a coat of thick-set tar that was heated to rather high temperatures, unfortunately for him. It was coursed over his entire body. A coat of feathers was attached. He was put upon a rail and ridden throughout the town of Boston. Not just being ridiculed, but being struck by men with clubs, children with animal feces, stones, bricks, anything that one might chuck at him. He did survive the ordeal, but not very readily. He will carry the scars of it with him for the rest of his life. And I did hear from one doctor that the flesh came off his back. When the tar was removed, the word used was it came off in sticks. Now, many people find it very uncomfortable, and a good soaking in turpentine will remove the tar, to be sure. It is heated if it is not already loose to begin with, not generally to boiling. And again, I know of no one who has died of tarring and feathering. In fact, those of you who are in Norfolk, you, sir, I remember you specifically talking about being witness to it in Norfolk in 1766, just when this trend began, we'll call it. What happened? A ship's captain in Norfolk began to inform on some of his fellow ship captains on those who were violating the laws regarding smuggling. He was informing on some of his fellow captains. His fellow captains did not like his reports being made to the authorities. His fellow captains enjoined others to have him tarred and feathered, dumped over the deck, or over the rails of his ship, into the Elizabeth River, and he nearly drowned. Nearly. He did survive. But this business of curing the refractory through a coat of thick-set and feathers. Well, the refractory, I see some children here. Good for you. In fact, these two right here, and I believe, where are the other ones? Where do they go? Oh, there you are. Oh, your nose is sticking right up. I think all four of you children were. the grand and wonderful science lecture that was given here by the natural philosophers. Yes, right in this courthouse. Grand, wonderful show it was. Very recently, the gentleman they were speaking on the physics of optical equipment, lenses and prisms and the like. And they did instruct that the use of a lens or a prism can be used to bend light away from its source and into a different direction. Refraction. A refractor is a person who bends or goes away from the public good. And anyone who would refract from the public good can be cured with a little dosing of tar and feathers. Sad but necessary. No one wishes to see that done, but it does happen. Would we react so if we had soldiers, God forbid, in Gloucester County? Would we react against those soldiers looking to perhaps kill your livestock, harm your family, take up your property or your money out of your very pockets? Of course you'd stand against it. Would you stand against your neighbors who assisted them? Of course you would. This is no different. You would prefer they would come around in a more pleasant way. But those who would accuse, forgive me, I walk right into the room assuming that everyone knows me. I am not in my own county. I am Colonel Archibald Carey, and I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance. I have the honor of representing Chesterfield County in the House of Burgesses, or when we were permitted a legislature, I represented Chesterfield County in the House of Burgesses, alongside my cohort, Benjamin Watkins. I have come to this county on the request of several of your better gentlemen that I might assist them in some of the business going on, and I have a few moments that I might provide it to you, you good Virginians. And I'm very pleased to provide it to you. The business that we see here is the business of us standing for those things that we all hold dear to us, our rights. Not our privileges, not our duties, our rights. And yes, our rights bring along privileges and duties, but it goes right down to it. The resolves that have been passed by the Congress. First, to enjoin the Crown that it might interpose itself on our behalf. We are simply asking the King to stand up and do his duty and defend his subjects, as is part of the compact. We are loyal to him in return for his protection of us. In return, we are loyal to him. You see, when you remove either part of that, you destroy the compact. He owes us no protection if we are not loyal. But if he is not protective of us, we owe him no loyalty. Sadly, it has been necessary that we make efforts to correct these businesses. The business of the attacks in Massachusetts Bay, of the people that live within Boston, heaven help them. And yes, I know I'm speaking to many of you about this. The people of Massachusetts Bay are not like us at all, but it does not mean that they are not Americans. Being Americans in this part of the continent, they are British subjects and they have the same rights that we do, regardless of how well we like them or how pleasant they may or certainly may not be. They're not pleasant people at all. It comes from their Puritanism. But again, differences certainly notwithstanding. We must understand that I want to make sure I stay to the agenda. We want to make sure that we are acting in as peaceful a way as possible. The British government has been acting in a violent way towards us, namely our cousins in Massachusetts Bay, first and foremost. But we are trying to act in a way that is peaceful, to restore those rights to us which have been taken. Keep in mind, nothing that we are arguing to be given to us is something we have not previously had. Tell me, did the first settlers of this neighborhood in Gloucester, did they invent a trial by jury? Certainly not. Did they invent the notions of legislative government? The notions of the sanctity of private property? No. We brought those with us because we are British. And our founding charters in Virginia say very plainly, we do not give up our rights merely because we do not live in Britain anymore. In fact, one might say it is our British duty to stand up and defend those rights, even if British government is the party removing them. Peacefully. peacefully, if at all possible. We are not a lot of barking bow wows like in Boston. For heaven's sakes, no. We don't have a riot every second Thursday simply for the fun of it. Lord, that makes him sound a bit like London, doesn't it?
Or Oregon.
Oregon Hill in Richmond, that's been rather quiet.
No, Oregon.
In Richmond. Oh, yes, yes, indeed. Oh, no, I'm quite familiar with it. I don't live too far away. But the point being, my friends, the resolves by Boston, or excuse me, the resolves at the Continental Congress in Philadelphia called for a way of us standing to make a move against the British government by affecting the merchants which employ a great many members of the British government, you see. Members of the House of Commons. We twist the merchants, they will in turn twist the politicians, and then they will move to a more favorable, righteous turn towards us as subjects of the crown. What is the most peaceful way to do that? Simply stop buying their goods. We are here as a colony, Virginia. We provide what? Principally tobacco and lumber. Those are our two of our great principal exports. It goes straight to England so that we can buy British goods, and it increases the power of their economy of money. And that aids us and assists us. The South Carolinians have their rice and their indigo. Massachusetts Bay with its codfish and the like. The Sugar Islands and all they all provide so they can keep the business moving, to keep the economy of money vibrant. You see, if we cease importing British goods, it affects that vibrancy. The merchants lose their profit, and they wish to have that corrected, and they squeal loudly at the members of Parliament they put in positions. And if this fails to work, those very same resolves spoken of in the association say that we will not simply stop importing, we will cease exporting. And that was done, to be quite honest, to placate us. We southern colonies that are so heavily dependent upon agriculture. Gives us time to bring in our crops one more time and get them sold. Gives us time to plant not tobacco, but perhaps flax for linen, or wheat for flour, and so on and so forth. Our cash crops are moved towards survival, subsistence crops. Gives us time. And it also gives Parliament an opportunity to right their course. If they do not, then there'll be no need to stop our exportation of anything. My friends, anyone who will tell you that we simply stand against Parliament because we don't want to pay taxes, to be quite honest, they're a little hot-headed and not looking at everything through a proper lens. Oh yes, the taxes we are angry about, to be sure. But is there a reasonable human being in this room, barring the jokes that I know will be made immediately, who thinks we can get by without taxes? No, we're sitting in a courthouse. Did someone simply walk over and lose an entire load of brick? Did someone walk over and simply lose an entire force of masons to assemble the brick into a courthouse? And they simply walked away saying, well, spring is here. I suppose I'll leave and go somewhere else and build a courthouse. No, it has to be paid for. The road that goes from Norfolk to Williamsburg, was that paid for by taxes raised by everyone in the colony? Absolutely it was. Taxes are necessary. But amongst the rights that we have acknowledged since our very entrance into this continent, is our right to tax ourselves. Let me ask you, sir, would you pay a tax that was raised by the people of South Carolina to be paid by you particularly to fund one of their projects that need to be taken care of?
No, sir.
No! Do you have a representative in South Carolina?
No, I do not.
Therefore, you have no obligation to pay their taxes. If you go to South Carolina and do business there, now you're within their bailiwick, aren't you?
Indeed.
Absolutely you are! And then you are beholden to pay taxes for the benefit of being there amongst them. It's only reasonable. I have heard it said by many who I assumed were better educated that, well, we simply require a member of Parliament. Let us have a member of Parliament to represent Virginia and to represent New York and Massachusetts and North Carolina and Georgia. Let us have a member of Parliament from each of the colonies to go and speak for us. Well, I do not believe it is unjust for me to say, fat lot of good that will do. 3,000 watery miles away from here is Parliament. Parliament sits. Parliament, if we sent someone to Parliament, they would have to pack up their families and all their possessions and move to England so that they could represent Virginia, the place they no longer live. It was known, it was terribly inconvenient to the point of impossibility to reasonably and constitutionally represent a people when you're not living amongst the people you represent, which is the crux of the entire argument against parliamentary taxation against us. That's why we have our own miniature parliaments, you might say. A microcosm, as it were. Within the House of Burgesses, I was a part of that miniature parliament, the House of Burgesses, so that the people of Virginia could have representation from someone who lived amongst them and would have to go back and answer to those people and perhaps be voted out when taxes were raised that they did not appreciate or affirm. Or any other law. That is simply one page in an entire book of laws that are created by the government. Now, the Tea Act. Well, let's go back even further. Not the Tea Act. Let's go back to the Stamp Act. We despise the Stamp Act. Stamps would be purchased by merchants from a stamp distributor, required by the Parliament to be put on the merchant's goods before he was allowed to sell them. Now, will the merchant simply let that stamp eat into his profits? No, he'll raise the product he has sold you to compensate for the stamp he had to put upon it. A merchant does not pay taxes. You pay the taxes for the merchant. But that's all right. When he buys his goods to sell, he's going to have to pay the taxes of the person prior to him. It's just the way business is. It's an evil of it. No one likes having a tooth pulled, but when it has to come out, it has to come out. There's no difference there. The point being, we despise the Stamp Act because the Stamp Act was not created by us to tax ourselves. The Stamp Act was created by a great lot of loathsome, spotty behind politicians in a place that we do not have any say. We spoke out against it. We rallied against it. And yes, I spoke out against Patrick Henry's Stamp Act resolves. They were much too inflammatory. Patrick Henry himself could be described in a very similar way. But I don't know what I despise more, Patrick Henry or the fact that I agree with him so frequently.
He's sitting back there.
I couldn't care less. I'm sure he's not too enthused by my company either. But the point being, we spoke out against the Stamp Act, and the Stamp Act was resolved. We used associations, and they were somewhat effective. Associations are nothing more than agreements. Agreements, in this case, to stop importing British goods. More or less it worked. It provided some aid until people began to step away from the agreements that they made for the sake of resuming their own business, you say. New Yorkers particularly. Yes, indeed, I'm just as, well, Dutchman, what can one expect? The point being, though, we stood up against it and it was resolved. What did it replace? What was replaced by it? The Declaratory Act, saying that Parliament absolutely has the authority to do what it just did and stopped. And it could do it again, and they did so with the Townsend duties. Stamps were gone, but they did place a tax on lead, glass, tobacco products, I should say. All that business, and of course the pernicious article of tea. And we stood up against those. The Navigation Acts, no different. We stood up against all of them, and they were all repealed in turn, except for what? Tea. Now tell me, we are getting that angry simply because we don't want to pay a tax on tea. No, not at all. The tea is merely a symptom of the disease. The disease is continued taxation without the consent of the people. One of the very reasons that got Cromwell's head cut off in the English Civil War. He bypassed Parliament and tried to tax the people directly. Taxation without their proper representation. It's no different. The tea is the symbol of Parliament's refusal to accept that they have no authority over us. Any more than the legislature of South Carolina can pass laws that Virginians must follow, Parliament has the same lack of authority in regard to us as a whole as Americans. And we stand up against it. Now, the Sons of Liberty in Massachusetts. The tea being destroyed in that place. For heaven's sakes, I do not encourage anyone to destroy private property. Yes, I do not care for the East India Company better than any of you. The East India Company takes advantage of the fact that they have stockholders within the government that can make these decisions, and they give them preferential treatment that none of us would be provided in any way. We despise that. But their private property, by the rules of the British Constitution, is no different from my private property or your private property. Private property is sacrosanct. It cannot be destroyed simply because you despise the person who owns it or the preferences the government might give them. It was a crime to destroy the tea. Any good Virginian, any good person will tell you breaking the law because you disagree with a party in an argument does not give you the authority to do it. It just doesn't. But when the tea was destroyed in Boston Harbor that cold Christmas, the British government took upon itself, through the Parliament, to act as judge, jury, and executioner and damn the entire colony for the crime of a handful of people upon their conviction. Let's just call it conviction. The entire colony was punished until the the tea would be paid for. Gunpowder is a different matter altogether, isn't it? Until the tea is paid for, the entire colony would suffer through the closing of the port of Boston. A punishment 100 times worse than the crime committed. We knew this. Here in Virginia, you know it as well as anyone else. We are not like Massachusetts people in any regard. Dare I say, some of us do not like Massachusetts people in any regard. But my heaven, just because we dislike them, just because they follow a religion that is obviously askew from reality. I'm a good Church of England man, by heaven. The whole reason Virginia exists was what people in Massachusetts were trying to get away from. Regardless of that, they are subjects of the British Crown in this continent, and they have the same rights we do, whether we like them, agree with them, or not. Went around British common law and decided to try the entire colony of Massachusetts Bay without any representation to defend themselves, to try them en masse without a court even. That was an attack against each and every one of us. And when they called for the closing of Boston Harbor, they may have well called for the closing of the Chesapeake Bay or Albemarle Sound or anything else they wished to do, because they had just as little authority there that they would have here. But if we remain silent, that would imply that we comply. Silence is acceptance. And we would not stay silent. Your own representatives here in Gloucester, they agreed with us. The majority of the members of the House of Burgesses decided that we would have amongst ourselves a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer to protest the closing of Boston Harbor and the illegal seizure of authority by the British Parliament. And we adjourned ourselves on June 6th. And we left the Capitol, the hall of the House of Burgesses. We adjourned at the Raleigh Tavern went into the Apollo room of that great place. Oh, forgive me, excuse me. We went, tavern was later, we went to church first. We left the Capitol, marched straight up the Duke of Gloucester Street, the clerk of the House of Burgesses bearing our official mace, the mace of our authority as a legislature. We adjourned to Bruton Parish Church. We listened to a sermon there by the Reverend Mr. Price, praying for the people of Massachusetts Bay and the unjust treatment they had received. Praying to the Almighty Savior of the world that He would avert from us the dangers and the evil of civil war. And Lord Dunmore, our late lamented governor, decided that was an abuse on his authority as the head of the Church of England in Virginia. He said we usurped that authority by calling for a day of fasting and prayer, for only the governor has the authority to do so. Well, by heaven, we did not, because we didn't make an official day of fasting and prayer, did we? Oh, we weren't going to stop you if you wished to. But we, our body, as the legislative body of Virginia, decided to protest the illegal actions of the British Parliament. And for that, Lord Dunmore dissolved us. In his dissolution of the legislature, he also deprived us of our courts. That's why there's been no official business in this court since that very day. The fee bill, the very bill that sets up the fees you pay, that pay the clerks for all the duties and business that they do. Without the fee bill, we can't charge you for what you have to do. Therefore, we have to shut court. The militia bill, that was gone too. In dissolving the House of Burgesses, he eliminated us of a legislature, an organized defense, and a legal system. When he did dissolve us, as punishment for our day of fasting and prayer, we adjourned from the House of Burgesses. Then we went to the tavern, the Raleigh Tavern, met in the Apollo room. And there's where we decided, those 89 of us in attendance, that we would propose to the other colonies that we would gather as a grand congress, which turns out to be, of course, Philadelphia. And we also decided we would be a part of a committee of correspondence, that we might stay in ready, constant communication with our fellows in the other colonies. Now we find ourselves here. Oh, and I would say, those of you who contributed to the relief of Boston, I personally would like to say thank you for that. I know I don't live amongst you. I live in a county up, 75 miles upriver from here? But I do thank you as an former elected representative of the people of Virginia. I myself put my entire ship, my own transport ship, the Carey. Not an original name, but I am proud of it. My ship, the Carey, was loaded to the gunwales with blankets and food and any other article that could be gathered up, and a fair quantity of money to be sent to Boston for the relief of the women and children there that are suffering for a crime they did not commit. And I know the very same things were being done here in Gloucester and throughout the Tidewater of Virginia. And you have my salute and my congratulations for your decency in that. But now we must stand. We all must stand because I do not like him, but again, I cannot lie and say that I disagree with him on many of his points. He said that at the Congress, he said he stands there not as a Virginian, but as an American. And that is how we must start to look at things. In fact, my good friend, I would say this, my good friend, General Washington, I think he put it best. How did he put it? Well, it's on the tip of my tongue. Someone please help me. What did he say?
Resolved that the cause of Boston is the common cause of all America, and we will firmly unite with the other counties in this colony, the other colonies on this continent,
and every measure that may be thought necessary for this alarming occasion.
Yes, the cause of Boston is the cause we all fight under now. Dare I say, an attack on Boston is an attack on you. Yes? Yes.
Yes.
Now, I believe, where's the clerk? Mr. Clark? Mr. Clark? Dude, here, please, take your seat. Take your seat. I do not have my spectacles upon my face.
21.
There he is. Yes, yes. Yeah, and a hot day, I wouldn't be wearing my wig either. Here, you're not a former member of the House of Virginians, and our expectations are. You make yourself comfortable on your chair, listen. And if you would make your statement here.
Clayton, I resolve that I, Jasper Clayton, the clerk of this meeting, transmit to the printers of both Gazette copies of the above resolves with a request of the county to insert them in their papers.
And dare I say, should we hear the resolves here just now? Would that be well?
Yes.
Who shall begin?
At a general and full meeting of the inhabitants of the county of Gloucester at the courthouse of the said county, after due notice, on Thursday, the 14th of July, 1774, James Hubbard, Esquire, Judge of the said county court, being unanimously chosen moderator, we come to the following resolves.
Resolve that we will ever maintain and defend His Majesty's right and title to the crown of Great Britain and his dominions in America, to whose royal person we profess the firmest attachment.
Resolved that it is the opinion of this meeting that taxation and representation are inseparable, and that as we are not, and from the nature of things cannot be represented in the British Parliament, every attempt of that body to impose internal taxes on America is arbitrary, unconstitutional, and oppressive.
Resolve number 3. Resolve that the act for blocking up the harbor of Boston and other purposes therein mentioned is cruel and unjust, and convincing proof of the fixed intention of Parliament to deprive America of her constitutional rights and liberties.
Hear, hear.
Resolved that the cause of Boston is the common cause of all America, and that we will firmly unite with the other counties in this colony and the other colonies on this continent in every measure that may be thought necessary on this alarming occasion.
If one agrees with these notions, one ought to say.
I agree.
Amen.
Resolved that we do most heartily concur with our late representatives in their resolve of the total disuse of tea, and do farther resolve against the use of any East India commodity whatsoever except saltpeter.
One must preserve one's food, yes?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Resolved that we will not import or purchase when imported any merchandise or commodities from Great Britain, and that a short day hereafter to be fixed, we will stop all exports to Great Britain until there is a total repeal of the Boston Port Act, all of the several acts imposing taxes on America for the purpose of raising a revenue, and those other acts made particularly against our brethren of the Massachusetts Bay on account of their noble opposition to the late revenue acts. Hear, hear.
Resolved that should our sister colonies of Maryland and North Carolina determine not to export their tobacco to Great Britain, we will be far from availing ourselves to their patriotic solution by continuing to export ours.
Resolved that we will submit to any resolutions that may be entered into either by the deputies of the several counties in this colony at Williamsburg or by the General Congress of the colonies on the continent.
Resolved that we will not deal with any person or persons in this county who will not sign this association. And strictly conform to the particular resolves of their respective counties, that will forever despise and detest them as enemies to American liberty.
Resolved, that is the opinion of this meeting, that immediately upon the non-exportation plan taking place, neither the gentleman of the bar nor any other person ought to bring any suit for the recovery of any debt or prosecute further any suit already brought during the continuance of these resolutions, it being utterly inconsistent with such scheme for any man to be compelled to pay without the means wherewithin he must pay.
Resolved that we do most cordially approve of the intended meetings of the late Burgesses on the 1st of August next at Williamsburg, and to dispute Thomas Whiting and Louis Birdwell, Esquires, our late worthy representatives, to consult with the duties of the several counties of this colony, and to adopt such measures as we are agreeable to the foregoing resolutions, hereby engaging in our parts to conform thereto and to support the same to the utmost of our power.
Hear, hear.
Well, it was a good vote. I'm a bit curious, though, I must ask. How many of you here are in full agreement with those resolves and the association? And in fact, Mr. Clark, I have an idea. Let us take a poll, shall we? And if you could take note of anyone who does not agree in the all those in favor of those resolves and the association that shall spring from it, indicate by raising your hands, aye. Aye. Leave them up there. Very well. Is there anyone opposed? Really? Oh, now, here, no, I don't wish. Make sure according to the results, very similar to being done throughout the other counties in this colony. Our committees of safety that have risen to replace the local governments, which simply cannot exist without courts. These committees of safety have no authority to punish anyone. We are but simple subjects of the crown in a state of nature, just as you are. Yes, we are comfortable wielding that power, and you, through your actions in supporting us, have indicated that you are comfortable with us wielding that power, and we are honored by your trust. But we have no authority. We can't put anyone in jail. We can't have anyone whipped. Heaven knows we can't have anyone hanged, nor would we wish to, merely for not being a part of the association against trade and the like. However, we do have a press. There are 2 Virginia Gazettes, and I have rumors of a 3rd arriving at Williamsburg. 2 Virginia Gazettes. We have anyone can put anyone's name in the newspaper. And if you have not taken yourself towards abiding by the Association Against Trade, and you have been brought before one of these committees of safety, which the large majority of people do support, you will be accused, of course, of not supporting the American cause, of retaining our liberties. You will then, if found guilty of such a transgression, You will not be punished, but your name will be put in the newspaper. And you will be identified as an enemy of American liberty. And then essentially you shall be shunned by anyone who you previously would have done commerce with. Most notably, it's merchants who tend to shy away from this, isn't it? Merchants that have no one to do business with. Sad thought, but we are not obligated to do business with anyone we choose not to do. And then, of course, if that doesn't work, there are people that make it through. Now, dare I say, ladies, I do not see your husbands. But I know, as in the case of my own household, my wife is Eve to my Adam. My wife is half of my soul as a human being. When we became married, we were but one flesh, just as you are. So ladies, if you would come up here and make a stake for your family in the absence of your husbands, I'm sure you wouldn't mind taking this opportunity, since you reconsidered your decision not to support the association, that you might come up and sign an oath to that effect. Oh, I hope the tree doesn't block the light. Yes, I'm sure your neighbors would encourage you to come up and sign this document, since the light's not being blocked by the tar or the feathers. Please, come up, sign. Oh, well then you're speaking for the whole family then. You ought to come up here. Absolutely. Then it's not a matter of your husband at all. God rest his soul. Please. Very well. I will speak to the Gloucester County Committee of Safety. I have no authority here. I'm a Chesterfield man. But I will speak to the members of the Gloucester County Committee, and perhaps they will see you, forgive me, your husband, when he is summoned. And he shall stand before the committee, and he can answer to your families not abiding by the association. And I'm sure, after your stout recommendations, that he abide by it for the good of not just your neighbors, but for yourselves. That I'm sure, ladies, your husbands will see the right, and they will no longer refract from the common good. Yes? All that being said, my friends, I understand that these are very difficult times, times that we have never anticipated. We Virginians are as loyal, no, more loyal than any single soul walking down a London street. We certainly could teach Britons lessons on being British. But the most British thing about us as Virginians is our rights. And I say again, those rights that we did not forsake when we left the shores of Britain to arrive here. The only thing I find more dear than my salvation through Christ Almighty is being British. Dare I say, the thing that distinguishes me from every other person in any other nation in the world. What makes me British are my rights. And I will not tolerate them, nor would you tolerate anyone abridging those rights under any circumstances, even if they are members of our own nation. If you would join me, my friends, in 3 cheers for the rights and liberties of British North America. Hip hip! Huzzah! Hip hip! Huzzah! Hip hip! Huzzah! And God save the people of the United of America.